Hi, everybody. Tahira Renee Christie here with Filter Free with Tahira Renee Christie. I am coming to you kind of spontaneously. Normally, I do these podcasts around 11 o'clock in the afternoon or 4 o'clock in the evening. But I have been inspired to kind of just go live and get an opportunity to chat with you guys about a very important subject to me and the audience of people that tend to listen to me. We're talking about grief today and managing grief and getting in the habit of healing. Um, this subject is near and dear to my heart because, as many of you do know, some of you do not, I lost my mom on Thanksgiving of 2022. And it's now been a full year and some months since I lost my mom abruptly to ovarian cancer. And I have gone through a grieving process that has been very unique. And I have so many stories to share, so much insight that I've gotten from this experience. And I'm so grateful that I'm able to come to you all from a space of healing, because so many of us, especially the loss of a parent, and so many people are losing people right now. While we're not in the pandemic anymore, it still feels like we're losing people kind of at that same rate of every time I open my feed, somebody has passed away. And that's very difficult for most people to manage because we're not necessarily given the tools to manage grief in a way that is productive. Oftentimes, when we grieve, we go to the extremes of behavior. We abuse substances or abuse people, or we recluse ourselves to no one and nothing, and we go in silence and in quiet, and we go into a depression and we want to be alone, or we party and we want to be around everybody to forget. Either way, these extremes tend to oversaturate our emotions with a substance that does not heal. It may coat, it may suppress, but it doesn't actually heal the feelings that are involved in the grieving process healthily. Now, I can say for sure, as my mom was in the process of her journey with cancer, and she was alive for 5.5 months after being diagnosed, it was a huge burden for obviously her, who had to go through the physical pain of dying before our eyes, and for our family, who had to watch her, who was literally the life of our family, the lifeblood of our family, have to watch her wither away into nothing and not know what to do. We were not prepared for this. I remember my mom used to say to me, when the apocalypse happens, it's going to be me and the roaches. That's who's going to be left, because my mom was literally the healthiest person we all knew. Pretty much anybody who knew my mom. She was the healthiest person anybody knew. Ate clean, ate raw, ate organic, ate vegan, drank smoothies. Literally, her last meal was a green smoothie. And I offered to cook her every type of luxury food on the planet just to get a bite in. She was like, no. She took her vitamins every day. She exercised. She did all the things. So we were not prepared. She was not prepared to die, and we were not prepared to grieve her. And so we were thrusted into a grieving process that began long before she passed away. And this week, which is why I'm doing this podcast, this week I've gotten 3 separate phone calls and or text messages of friends of mine who either a parent passed, a parent has gone into hospice, or a parent has been diagnosed with something that feels like it could be terminal. And that's just this week. Because I've been sharing my grieving journey, people have been very open with me about their own grief processes, whether that's the death of someone, the loss of a marriage, the loss of, a connection that was deep to them. They've been sharing these processes, and we all process loss differently, but there is some commonality between all of us as we learn how to manage our emotions and also support the loved one that may be going through that process as well. I know that in my family, I've got 4 children. One of my children in particular went through something very devastating when she was very young, and I had to keep a very strong face during her grieving process. And it wasn't, we ended up having a social worker and a counselor that came in and spoke to both of us. And during that process, the social worker said, you know, your mom also has to go through a grieving process of her own. Even though what happened to you, she also has to grieve. And that moment of her acknowledging that while I wasn't the one directly experiencing the loss of whatever that was, it was a loss to me. It was something that I was also experiencing alongside with my child. And all I could do was cry. I literally cried and bawled my eyes out, because I finally got the opportunity to grieve, to feel the loss of what she had felt in her moment of suffrage. And I think so often when you're the strong friend, when you're the go to person, when you're the refuge for so many people, you don't get the opportunity to just sit and feel and be with your feelings because you've got to manage everyone else. As a singer, I've sang at many of funerals, I've sang at many of weddings, I've sang at many church services, you name it. I've been able to support families during celebrations and during times of loss. And obviously, well before I lost my mom, I sang at a lot of funerals of a lot of grandmas and moms and sisters and aunties and people who were popular in the community. And while I would sit there and listen to the families express their love and their gratitude or their sadness about the loss of an individual that they love so much, um, I saw the pain, I saw the hurt, I saw the bewilderment of loss, meaning they didn't know what to do because this person was that Meemaw, that Medea, that grandma, that Nana, that person of the family, that big mama who held people together. And without her, how was the family to move on? How were we to see things from another perspective outside of I'm sad and who's going to cook Christmas dinner and who's going to make sure all the kids get school clothes for, the school season, and who's going to, you know, do the family gatherings, who am I going to call when I'm sad or when I need. And so grief can take on many forms when we're in those states of mind, especially bewilderment. I feel like I went through all of those stages, but that was probably the most profound feeling I had, because of the fact that my mom was supposed to last forever. I know that other people have lost their moms, but my mom was supposed to last forever in my mind, right? And I feel like we all feel that way. We don't, like, I remember when my mom lost her mom, my grandmother was 94 when she died. My grandfather was 98. My mom was 72. We didn't expect her to go so young, considering she was so healthy and everyone else died of old age in our family. I have great aunts. They were in their late 80s, early 90s, everybody. So to experience that loss. And then after my mom passed away, her oldest brother passed away 2 months later. My mother's youngest brother passed away a month after that. So when they say it comes in threes, it really does, unfortunately. And I know that was a huge blow to my family. And um, I feel like almost like there's no big mama anymore that we can rely upon to kind of keep everybody together on that side of my family, because everybody's kind of bewildered. Everybody is kind of like experienced so much loss in so many areas of their lives. They don't know what to do. And so they all kind of looked to me, and in my mind, I'm the kid. I'm the kid of the person who died. I'm supposed to be the one nurtured, but there was no there's no one picking up that mantle. And so I feel like, um, there comes a time for every type of person, because every family has a dynamic of multiple personalities. I happen to be the responsible one, right? I happen to be the Medea. I happen to also have the most kids of all the cousins in, this particular side of my family. And I happen to be the one who's done the most emotional work, the most spiritual work, to be a whole being that people coming at me a certain way, or people being emotional around me, or people responding in a way that feels like an attack. doesn't bother me because I don't take these types of things personally, because again, I've done the work. So I've kind of put that hat on of um, expectancy and responsibility when it comes to being the grief counselor, or the loss expert, or the support system for my family and my friends who experience loss. I'm grateful that people see the responsibility within me, but it can be overwhelming from time to time. I'll be honest with you. Not right now. I'm in a beautiful place. I'm in a great, wonderful, beautiful place in my life, emotionally, spiritually, mentally. I could use more sleep, but that's everybody. But otherwise, I'm in a great place. So I'm grateful to be able to be in a space, to be able to be supportive of the people who are going through loss at this time. And I think the biggest thing for me, and I'll segue into this other part of grief subject. I'll just touch upon death. When it comes to the loss of a person that you care for deeply, I think the biggest thing to remember, there's three C's in loss, and how to manage grief, and I'll just mention them briefly. You want to choose what's best for you. You want to connect with people that support you, and you want to communicate what you need, right? So choosing what's best for you is a personal choice. It's like kind of having a personal relationship with God. It's, you don't have to go to church in order to be connected spiritually. You don't have to declare it to the mountaintops that I'm hurt and I need, but you choose how you manage your grief at any given moment. And it does change. And because it changes, it can change frequently. It can be the same for 20 years. You choose your path, but understand that whatever you choose will affect how you function on a daily basis, how you interact with the world. I remember the first year after my mom passed, I did a lot of pop-ups as a business owner. I would do pop-ups. I'd be amongst people in the community. And I saw a lot of business owners and young women with their moms selling with them. And my mom used to do that with me all the time. And I remember the first time I saw a mom daughter duo, not only did jealousy and anger and frustration flood my physical being, not because I had no qualms against these people. They were out there doing what they needed to do in order to make their businesses successful. I'm happy for them. A normal Tahara would be happy for them. But my grieving process was so fresh that I just busted out in tears. I was just sad. I was sad because my mom would go in my pop-ups and say, lotion sample, soap sample, would you like to try everything? All natural and organic. And it was so great to see her enthusiasm for me and for my business and what I was promoting. And then suddenly that was gone. My mom worked with me up until a month before she was diagnosed, because she just was getting slower and we didn't understand why. So that was a huge blow. But what I did was I chose to pull back on doing pop-ups for a while. People were like, where are you going to be? I'm like, nowhere right now. And I still have not gone back into full-time pop-ups at all. But in the beginning, I couldn't do them at all, especially not without crying at some point. So I pulled back, and that was my choice. That was my choice to not put myself in harm's way, not put myself in a position to be anything other than kind to other people. I didn't want to cry all the time. I didn't want to, I chose not to show my emotions to the public. I have the most amazing friends, the most amazing comfort system, the most amazing village of people who were there for me in ways that I could never explain, because I'm happy to give. I'm a giver, so I give that to people, but to receive it back in my time of need, right when I needed, how I needed it. When I tell you that's love, to get love the way you need it, not just the way somebody wants to give it to you, but to get it the way you need it, proved to me that the way that I love is effective, because I got it back. So I'm very grateful. So I chose to go inward when I needed to, and I chose to come out when I wanted to. So make a choice of what your plan of action is going to be. There's no right or wrong way. The next step of grief, I would say, is connect. You want to connect with good people, as I mentioned, that have your back. And not everybody is going to be able to have your back. I'm going to go into a brief story here. I had a friend who experienced loss of a very important person in their lives. Um, you know, losing a parent or losing a spouse or losing a child. Those are probably the three ultimate for most people. Not saying that there are people outside of that if you lose them, it's not a huge deal, but a child, of course, your spouse, wow, a parent, we all will probably experience that at some point in our lives. It's difficult, is my point. And this person in particular, their village abandoned them during the most difficult loss, the most difficult time of this person's life. They just, like the most important people in their lives, abandoned them. And through my counseling of this person, I had to explain to them as they were feeling the loss of their loved one and then the loss of friendships that were around forever. They had to figure out why and how to manage the fact that everyone is not capable of managing your grief with you. That is a tough pill to swallow because many of us gather friendships based on commonalities, right? We like music, we like to go out, we've got kids, we work at the same place, we go to the same church. We have some commonality that brings us together. We like to go to happy hour, we have coffee, we work out together. There's some kind of commonality. And you've been doing it for years. So you've been friends for years. So the expectation is when I have a wedding, you're going to come. When I, have a big gala or something, you're going to support. When I have a birthday party, you're going to be there. When I lose somebody, you're going to be there too. Well, hold on. That's a different need. And not everybody has the same capability. Just like nobody grieves the same. No, everybody doesn't have the same capability of supporting that grieving person the same. There are some people you really probably won't even speak to at all. And then suddenly you go through a loss and they're there for you in ways that you couldn't even imagine. I know that happened to me. There are people I haven't talked to in years. And when I lost my mom, they became a crutch almost in times that it was necessary for me. And I could not be more grateful for their support. But they came out of the woodworks. They didn't want to party with me. They didn't want to network or do business in transactions. But when it came to the loss of my mother, they were there for me in mighty ways. So you can't expect people to work outside of their emotional maturity. You can't expect people to work outside of the realm of what makes sense for their lives and what allows them to shine best. One of my superpowers is being able to see people for who they are, not who they present to me, but who they are, who they actually are. And so when I employ people or when I put people in positions of power or in workspaces, I see how they work. I see what would amplify their skills and I put them in that position. It may not be what they normally do for work. It may be a different title or a different position or working with different types of people, but it's because I want to open up a portal of what they could be if they had the right encouragement to be. And I found that I'm very successful in putting people in positions where they can win and they appreciate the fact that I trusted and believed in their skill set. The same applies for someone you want to connect with in order to allow yourself the proper grieving process. You want to connect with people who have your best interest in heart, who are there to listen to you, who are there to support you in your time of need without seeking something in return. I also came across a lot of people during my grieving process who it was an opportunity for them to share their grieving process, even if that grieving process was 10, 20 years ago. I lost my mom in 1996, and let me tell you, okay, sometimes that's insightful. A lot of times people tend to share their experience because it's an opportunity for them to let out some of the grief that they didn't have the opportunity to let go of. And in those situations, I never cut anybody off. I never stop anybody from that. But in the beginning, when it was fresh and raw, my eyes rolled in the back of my head a few times because I'm like, this is not about you. It's just not. This moment right now is just, it's about like, let me have this moment. Let me have my grief. And I understand people are used to me nursing. They're used to me being the supportive person. But in times of that where it's like, well, I lost my mom, or I needed this and so this happened to me, it turned into a reverse counseling session. And I'm sure people who have experienced loss, you experience that. I'm very grateful that I had the opportunity to see friends of mine who experienced that loss and experienced that bombarding of other people's emotions. So I knew how to manage that gracefully. I would listen and support them and say, I'm sorry that you experienced that, and be supportive and be there. But then I knew not to go to those people for my own healing because they didn't have the capacity. And I'm not going to fault them for that. I'm not going to say, well, I was there for you. How come you can't be there for me? That is not their capacity. We have to be honest with ourselves. Please be honest with yourself before anybody else about people's capacity. If you pay attention and you listen to people, they will tell you exactly who they are. They'll tell you exactly what they're capable of and what they're not. And it's your job to listen to them. It's your job to believe them. I believe everything everybody tells me, not the substance of what they're saying. I believe how they're delivering it. I see the heart in which they come from, in which they give of themselves to whatever the subject is. And I believe their actions. Could care less what you say. Don't worry about words. Words are absolutely nothing. The proof is in your actions and how, and your conviction and your credibility and what I see of you. So you have the opportunity to know people. The older you get, obviously, the wiser you get, the better and easier it becomes to notice those things, because you will have interacted with enough people to know when somebody's shucking and jiving and when they're the real deal. But that's a skill set that's baked over time. You've got to go through the trial and error of interacting with people, which is why when you're in the grieving process and you don't want to be bothered with people, you're actually hurting yourself from learning who you can trust and who you can't. It is when people are drunk and when they're sad, when they're, they have nothing to lose, that they are the most honest. While some people shy away from people like that, I tend to enjoy watching the extremes of people because that tells me who you are. I had a girlfriend of mine, side story, who she saw me mad for the first time, like truly angry. I typically am not out. I'll catch an attitude from time to time, but she saw me truly angry for the very first time in her life, pissed. And I don't typically show that to people. And I tell people all the time, in order for us to really be friends, you got to see me naked twice. You got to see me angry at least once. And if it's at you, we really friends. Because if I cuss you out good one time, I got to cuss you out one time where we have that boundaries conversation, and you stick around, oh, we in like Flynn. We could do this. So the point was, she saw me very, very angry. And she was like, I've never seen that. And it wasn't at her, but to know that what I'm capable of, believe it. Believe that as a nice person, as one of the kindest people you will ever meet in life, I too can get angry. And you piss me off enough, you're going to get that other side of me. I promise you, I bury that other twin so deep down in my soul. Okay. She don't come out, but when I'm in the hood or when I'm talking to customer service agents, I'm just kidding. She don't come out hardly ever, but you poke a bear enough, the bear is gonna come out. And so, but believe me, believe that you saw that side of me, understand that I can get that angry if provoked. And most people, most of the time, I'm mature enough to not allow myself to get to that stage of provoking. That particular situation was just, it was BS. It was, somebody did me real wrong. So claws had to come out. Okay, I'm still from the hood regardless. So anyhow, I encourage you to connect with the right people. I emphasize connecting with the right people, because the wrong people can make your grieving process very difficult for you. And so, yes. And lastly, the last C is communicate. You want to talk about what your needs are. The very last thing that you should be doing when you're grieving is going inward all the time and by yourself. Let me qualify that statement. I spent a lot of time with myself over the last year, a lot of time with myself. In the beginning, I threw myself into work. I was like, oh, if I'm working, I'm not thinking about my mom. It's cool. But, you know, I'll be fine. As long as I just keep moving, I'll be fine. And that was advice from a friend of mine who had lost her mom. She's like, I just kept working. I just kept working, and that helped me to kind of focus. I was like, okay. And I did that, and it worked for a while. It sustained me for a while. It masked the pain. It helped me to process some things. But did it cure anything? Absolutely not. It was a great, brief um, stepping stone to the stages of healing that I was going through. But it didn't heal anything. It just helped me to get through some difficult times, because my situation being as unique as it was, I lost my mom. 4 months later, my husband lost his mom. And then my husband had to leave just before his mom passed. And his father, who was in the hospital at the time that his mom died, then took care of his dad for 5 months in Northern California. So my husband was 500 miles away from my family. And then suddenly I was grieving alone. And it wasn't just me grieving, it was my child who was grieving. We were all grieving, but my youngest child was 8 years old when my mom passed away. And that was her best friend. So my daughter lost her best friend. I lost my mom. My sister lost her only friend. And then suddenly everybody was coming to me with needing support. My husband, who's just a rock star, you know, he held it down so well emotionally for me, and I for him. But we both had to stay busy. We both had to stay busy in order to stop from breaking down. Because my 8-year-old at the time cried every day. And that process alone was, if you've ever seen or know anything about my child, she is the sweetest. She's the sweetest child on the planet. And I sometimes would say I don't feel like I deserve her, because she is the best. She's like the best kid on the planet. But I know that she's what I could handle at this point in my life. So God knew and gave me an easy child. Um, but when she cries, the world stops. Not to say that my other kids, the world didn't stop, but I also raised them as a single mom. So I had to be mother and father for many years of their lives. So I knew how to cut off that emotion from, you're crying, but we got to do this because I'm the only parent. So my last child, who's with my husband, I don't have those guards up. I don't have that single mom hat on. I don't have that cloak. I'm able to feel all of my emotions. I'm able to express myself lovingly without fear or worry that someone's using me or hurting me, or like I'm in a beautiful space. And so as she was allowed to express herself, I had to shut all of that down. I wasn't able to flow with my feelings. I had my private moments with my friends and with my husband, but if I wanted to talk about my mom or grieve out loud around my daughter, I mean, she would just bust out in tears no matter where we were, what we were doing. It happened at school. We went through a good 9-10 months of just that. So I had to just cut off my emotions, which was really hard, because I had my sister texting me like, how are you dealing with mom being gone? I'm like, I talked to her a lot when she was alive. I interacted with her all the time. I took her out to lunch and on vacations, and I loved her, like, as an action word. I didn't just think, oh, it's just my mom, she'll be around. I valued her and her presence while she was here. So my grieving process was completely different than my sister's. My daughter, who was the closest person to my mom, grieved very loudly, very outwardly, because she literally lost her appendix. You know, she lost her lung, she lost her kidney. My mother was woven into the fabric of my child's existence. So her grieving process was really hard. My husband, who has known my mom since he was 16 years old, um, and going through the process of losing his own mom, but being the stoic man he was aloof. He was very withdrawn from grief, from physically announcing grief, crying. He didn't do any of that. He was very stoic. My twin daughters, one was emotional from time to time, but very logical in her way of grieving. So she conceptualized it spiritually and philosophically. And the other one just went to work. She worked. She got a tattoo and she worked. That was it. That was her grieving process. And my son went inward. He didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want to deal with it. He didn't want to say anything. And I almost think he went numb and angry. Those are 6 people from my family. And I didn't even mention me. But each and every one of us grieved completely different than the other. But the one thing I was very grateful that I was able to provide all of them and myself was good communication. We had family meetings, we sat down, we talked, we had counselors in Greek. We did all the things to get it out. Whether it was, do you want to say anything? No. Okay, we'll pass. Kind of like an AA meeting, but everybody had the opportunity to speak, to write things out. One of the other things that we did on this past Thanksgiving, which it had been a year since her passing, she died the evening of Thanksgiving of 2022. We started a gratitude jar. And we put in something we're grateful for every single day from Thanksgiving until New Year's Day. And then we opened up our jars and we read all the things we were grateful for. We did that because my mom had a gratitude journal and she had everything in there from I'm grateful for winning an $8 lottery ticket to I'm grateful I was able to get my dry cleaning out on time. I'm grateful I made the red light to get home before Real Housewives started. When I say it was the most egregious, simple things in life, but for her, it was a big deal. And what that taught me was the power of gratitude. And while my mom was not prepared to die, she died a grateful woman. She died a wonderful servant of God. Her life was something that I can model my own life after. And so for me, my grieving process was to be reminded of her example, reminded of her support, because my mom was such a support person. And so now I cry tears of joy. And every once in a while, some tears of sadness because I do miss her so much. 2 songs in particular send me over the moon. And my mom's favorite song was I Will Always Love You, which I used to sing all the time. I cannot sing that song anymore without crying. I can get through most of the song, but at the end, when it goes from the long sustaining note to the you, from that big note to that don't I love you, I can't. I just got a little bit, I can't. So that part, I can't even get, because I will always love my mom. I will always love her so, so much. That song and a song by Richard Smallwood, and Smallwood singers, a gospel song called Angels. Angels watching over me. And I changed the words. Mommy watching over me. And I think about my mom and I appreciate that I know she's watching me. And as I go through my own triumphs and my own setbacks in life, when I do something really good, I'm like, Mommy, this is for you. I wish that she could be here to physically see it, but it fuels me. It motivates me to do better. And my prayer for all of you in your grief is that you find a way to make that level of setback, that hurt, that pain, a stepping stone for something new. I'll never forget my mom. I'll never forget all the people that I've lost. There have been many that have a great influence over my life to this day. I think, what would they do? How would they want me to represent in this particular space at this particular time? And it fuels me to do better, to be better, to offer, better, and be the best version of myself, because I know they're watching me. I hope they're not watching me when I'm in the bathroom, but I know they're watching my overall life. And I believe deep in my heart that these souls continue to pass through this universe and, and remind us of what's at stake. We're not living this life just to live it. We're not living this life just to be on social media and to clout chase and to raise kids and to have a job and pay bills and die. It reminds me that the purpose of my life is so much more grand than what's right in front of me. It's so much deeper than the people I interact with on a daily basis. It's the responsibility that I hold to be the best version of myself because my children are watching, because I have a community of people that hold me in a credible position to know that I'm going to always tell the truth and that my experiences are real and that what I offer the world comes from my soul. That fuels me. That motivates me to be my very best version of myself. And I've failed many times. I will fail some more, but I fail up. And the goal and the desire is to continue to seek wise counsel, continue to look out for people that can support me in my time of need. One more example I'll give you before I close out here. A lot of people, I know we've talked about death a lot, but a lot of people are grieving the loss of relationship, the loss of a marriage, the loss of a best friend. I've got examples of both. I did a live where I was talking about my grieving process, and what I was talking about, I received a phone call from someone who, mentioned while my grief is not death, my grief is the loss of my marriage, and it feels like death. The pain is the same. And I had a friend who, before I lost my mom, before my mom was even sick, I was empathizing with her loss. And I know it was really difficult for her. And I said, I'm just so sorry for your loss. I understand how you feel. And she was like, you don't understand how I feel. You still have your mom. And I was taken aback. But again, I don't take things like that personally. That's her opinion. That's her experience. And after I lost my mom and that person was there for me, when I tell you I would have said the exact same thing. I felt the exact same way. And the reason behind that is loss is loss. You could lose. I remember my husband, when he was working in North Dakota for a while ago, it was a really difficult time in life. And he held on to his things so close to the point where, because he's working 120 hours a week at that time, and he all he had was his stuff. He didn't have his family, he didn't have his kids, he didn't have his wife, he just had his stuff. He lost his spoon. I want to say it was a plastic spoon. It was probably a metal spoon. Either way, it was a spoon. When I say the man was pissed, when I say he was pissed because he thought somebody stole his spoon. When I say he was pissed about a spoon, somebody stole his spoon, you hear me? And he grieved the spoon like it was a person. Not because he's superficial, but because that's all he had to hold on to. And he lost that one thing. He ended up finding it, by the way. Swore somebody stole it, but he grieved it for a few days like it was a person, because it was all he had to hold on to keep him during such a long, difficult time of his life. I say all that to say loss is loss is loss is loss is loss is loss. Grief is a process to manage pain. Grief is love without a place for it to go. And if you've lost something that you loved and you can no longer love that thing, that person, that experience, then where does it go? Where does the love go? And how do you feel about that? How do you feel about the loss of that love? You're probably going to feel devastated. I want to call every time. The one person I talk to all the time, my mom. My mom knew everything about me. I told her everything. Stuff she didn't want to hear, child. She was going to hear, you, my mom, you're going to hear about it, period. I can't call her anymore. I can't tell her about my day. I can't tell her about these kids. I can't tell her what my husband did. I can't tell her. I have friends I can talk, but it's my mom. She knew me from the beginning. And now that's ended. It hurts. It's loss. When you've worked on a marriage for 10, 12, 15, 20 years, somebody cheats or something goes awry, or you're fighting over money or communication, whatever it is, that's loss. You planned to build your life with that person. Even if it's something, I remember I wrote a book called How to Deal with Your Baby Daddy. And the first line of my book is it's an unnatural process to separate from the father of your child. So if it's not, I wanted to start a family with this person. I expect this person to love me forever, even though we weren't married. We had kids. We're bound forever. I haven't talked to that person in, it's been 9 years. It's been a long time. In the beginning, there was a grieving process there. I lost who at that time was a really good friend of mine. I lost the connection with the father of my kids. It hurt. I wanted to ram my car into a few things, okay? Hurt some people. I had a lot of very big emotions about that. It was loss. So whenever somebody says, you're grieving or you don't know what I've gone through. You don't know how I feel. I don't. I do. It's the same emotion packaged in a different form. It doesn't stop it from being the same process of figuring out the how and why and what you're going to do in order to get through the process. Grief is a process, and I say process because there is no ending point. You don't just stop grieving one day. You find new ways of managing it. You go through the cycles of managing it in different ways. One of my friends mentioned to me that grief is like a box with a bouncy ball inside of it. Very profound analogy. And in the beginning, when the person first goes away, loss of relationship, death in the family, that bouncy ball is bouncing against the walls just constantly. It just, all it can do is bounce, right? And grief over time, like that box over time, expands. The ball is still bouncing, but it hits the sides less often. And when it hits the sides less often, you will still experience the suffrage, the pain, the hurt, the loss, but it's less often. So you find new ways of managing it so that you're not crying all the time. You're not devastated all the time. You're not talking about the loss like it happened yesterday. I want to say I've done maybe 4 videos about the death of my mom, and each video has been different. They were at different stages of some videos I came on trying to be logical and I just started crying. Some videos I'm like, I'm good. Life is good. I'm good. Some videos I'm angry. They're all valid. But I can say now that it's been a little over a year that I cried less. I think about her all the time. But I can conceptualize that pain and put it in places so that at the right time, I can sing my praise and worship songs and cry. I think I was at the last time I was at the gym. Thank God the gym I go to, there's nobody in like the main workout room. So I'm lifting my weights and I'm like crying, singing my song in the dark by myself with my headphones in, blasting my gospel music. And it's perfect because nobody sees me. Nobody knows they just see is somebody lifting weights in the mirror. And I'm able to have those moments. There are times where I've been in the kitchen cooking and, listening to a song that triggers me, and my husband will come down. What's wrong? I'm just praising God. I'm just so grateful. And it's tears of joy at that time. It's all okay. It's all okay. And if you didn't get anything else from this time together, I pray that you got that whatever it is, however you feel, it's okay. Find the right people that can help you manage where you are at any given time. And that may change. It may be multiple people, it may be one person. It may be a group think. It may be a class or a therapist or, friend or family member. But find people that can support you at the different stages that you're in. Love yourself through this process. You don't deserve the loss, and the loss didn't happen to you. However, the loss affects you. So when you look at it from that perspective, that it's not happening to me, God didn't take this person away from me to hurt me. It is something that's happening around you and to you, and The proper tools will help you to properly manage that situation. But it is something that you have to process yourself through so you can find the beauty in life that's still being lived. Find the beauty in life that's still being lived because you still have a life to live. And lastly, communicate. Talk about the way that you feel. Now that social media is pretty much everything for most people all the time, and you have the ability to express your opinion all the time, use it as a medium to heal. It might heal yourself, it might heal someone else. You might be able to help someone else in the process. There are tons of grieving groups offered by many social work platforms, or through maybe your HMO or your PPO. Your therapist or your doctor can support you. Church family, friends or family members that you may have, build your village. You have the ability to create the life that you want. It just requires a little bit of support from you to get it going. So I hope that this has been helpful. I know I kind of went through a lot of different, a lot of information here, but get in the habit of healing yourself. And this is yet one way to heal, because when we go through loss, it can just stop us. It can literally stifle us from moving forward in other areas of life that just are going to keep going regardless of how you feel. But if you get in the habit of healing in various ways, when blows happen, and they will happen, I always account for 4 crises a year. I prepare myself for them. So when they happen, I mark them off and say, okay, this is how we're going to move through this one, and we're going to move forward. You'll be better for it in the long run. The Habit of Healing. I feel another book coming. On. So thank you guys for joining me. This has been Filter Free with Tahira Renee Christie, a special episode that I hope you will replay, share, like, and subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, as well as Instagram at Tahira Renee. I did not put any of my banners. Nothing with here. There you go. Could have been putting that the whole time. But anyhow, follow, like, and subscribe. I just put Instagram, and I even put just out of control. We're going to pray about Tahira. She's going to get it together one of these days. Well, I thank you guys for joining me, and we'll see you on the next episode of Filter Free with Tahira Renee Christie. And that's it. See you next time. I didn't end the stream. Oops. Bye.